So in The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield talks about how we can transmute resistance. It's also discussed extensively in the book, The 50th Law. So I want to discuss both of them. And resistance is how we emotionally relate to something. Could be a person, could be an environment, could be in relation to, as he says here, a pursuit of any calling, writing, painting, music, film, dance, or any form of creative expression. It could be launching of an entrepreneurial venture, or it could be experience in relation to the different aspects of the journey to the success in that entrepreneurial venture. Number 3, it could be starting a health regimen and perhaps also staying committed to that health regimen, whatever workout regimen. It could be anything related to perhaps matters of the heart. And why is that the case when it comes to matters of the heart? Well, from my experience, Steve Jobs, in his commencement speech, mentioned, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. I live like this more so to a higher degree than ever before in my life, but I didn't start off this way. There were times where, yes, I was courageous to listen to my heart and intuition and stay committed to see into fruition, whatever it may be. Could have been certain assignments at school. It could have been learning how to play a certain sport at an earlier stage of my life. And then there were times where I allowed the experience of resistance to hold me back. And this is key. Allowed the experience of resistance. Like, for example, I was thinking, resistance is a bad thing. It's wrong to feel resistance. Is it really true? Is it wrong to feel emotions? Is it wrong to be who you truly desire to be? Is it wrong to desire to have an entrepreneurial venture that is successful so you can have a wonderful, lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit? Is it wrong to create products and services that benefits the lives of others? Is it wrong to take your art and turn it into a wonderful product or service that could benefit the lives of others? Why would one believe it's wrong? Well, because they identified with certain thoughts in relation to experiences in which they formed beliefs. Or maybe they looked around to see what others were thinking and imagine that that's the way that they should think, even though it was not helpful for them. And so they formed these beliefs. Now, these beliefs result in resistance. As a matter of fact, if you have a conversation with the resistance, you could track it back to the beliefs identified with. See, matters of the heart, you truly desire to live the way you truly desire to live. Yet, one might have a challenge to commit to what they truly desire to experience in life, living how they truly desire to live. And there's nothing wrong with them. What I mean by that is the true self already is fulfillment, as we discussed in Sunday's video. I'll link in the description to it. We experience a desire to acknowledge we already have it. Desire means you already have. Again, watch Sunday's video for further elaboration on what I mean by that. So when it comes to matters of the heart, we want heart and mind to be in a wonderful relationship. Mind is blank, and it perhaps is filled with beliefs that are not helpful, generating this resistance. If we release identification to those beliefs, the resistance then disappears. See, in the earlier stages of my entrepreneurial journey, I was around, and I still am right now, but I'm speaking about my earlier stages. I was around these entrepreneurs who had no qualms about sales, no qualms about marketing. They had a product or a service, and perhaps both, product and service, that they were interested in. They had a genuine desire to see that product and or service into the hands, into the use of their prospective clients. And they would send out emails, they would make phone calls, they would visit clients' sites. They had no resistance. And I admired that. I said, listen, I also have products and services that benefit others, but for some reason I have challenged doing that. And they said, well, you may have identification, and although they didn't say it this way, but this is what they were saying. You have identification to certain beliefs. You're telling yourself certain stories. What's the story you're saying? There's nothing wrong with you for experiencing resistance, but it is the result of these beliefs. And it could be things like a person might be afraid to ask for money because they feel that they are taking advantage of another person. Now, if you look at that accurately, they're not taking advantage of another person. They're providing a valuable product or service in exchange for fair compensation. The client genuinely wants to pay for the service. The client genuinely wants to receive the benefits from the service. The service provider has the service. It's a wonderful service. And so there's a belief that has been identified with that is resulting in resistance to starting that conversation, to sitting down with the prospect and understanding their pains, their needs, their desires, their frustrations, without shame or condemnation, understanding. And translating that understanding into a wonderful solution, maybe a custom solution, that could benefit them. And when that conversation is had in a flow-based way like that, it's clear, and the deal is facilitated. So, this resistance to perhaps money or any medium of exchange, relationship with self, relationship with others, if resistance is being experienced prior to engaging in that conversation or anywhere during the conversation or after the conversation, there's nothing wrong with you because you transcend beliefs. The true self is beyond beliefs. Beliefs exist in mind, and mind is purely blank. We place in mind the beliefs. They start with thoughts. Person identifies with that thought. They begin to, through repetition, either knowingly or unknowingly, form beliefs. And those beliefs can be held to a firm conviction if they are persisted upon. And so, when a person is experiencing resistance, it's a wonderful thing. One of the reasons why it's a wonderful thing is it helps bring awareness to these beliefs. As he says, resistance arises from within. The true self is beyond resistance. Who you truly are is beyond resistance. If you experience resistance, then you are not the resistance. Yes, you are experiencing resistance, and nothing wrong with you for experiencing resistance if you experience resistance. By acknowledging that we transcend resistance, we don't resist the resistance. We allow the resistance to be, and thus it dissolves. We may also transmute the resistance into a service to others, into producing the music, the painting, the film, the dance, whatever, the entrepreneurial venture. And we could fall in love with the process of doing this. So, he says the idea of turning pro is a wonderful way to transmute this resistance into the creative expression or whatever it may be for you. He covers a lot of different points in relation to turning pro. I'd like to focus on 3 today. Number 1, showing up each day. And I always say, showing up each day from a state of flow. Number 2, remaining committed. And I always say, remaining committed from a state of flow. And number 3, remaining committed for the long haul. As in, showing up each day, committed to whatever it is, the workout regimen. See, I don't have anyone around me. I wake up in the morning, I go to the gym, and most of my day, I'm by myself. And I have a preference. I mean, the couch is right in front of me. My room is right beside me. I could just go lie down in the bed every time I experience resistance. But I know that the cave I fear to enter holds the treasure that I seek. I know that any resistance that arises is a result of identification to belief. And if I could release identification to that belief, I could be free. I could feel free in that regard, which I did over the years. And that's why I remain committed. Wasn't the case in the earlier stages. And again, nothing wrong with me. Nothing wrong with a person who is experiencing resistance. We can understand the resistance and transmute the resistance. So what he's saying here is, by showing up each day, by remaining committed, and by remaining committed for the long haul, the resistance is transmuted into the creative expression. The emotions are transmuted, or more specifically, emotions are energy in motion, how we relate to emotions. Rather than being suppressed or repressed, they are transmuted, and a person accomplishes whatever it is that they desire to accomplish. We could say, allow those emotional experience to fuel the creative expression. If you look at the stories, and I've read many biographies, I've met with many people who are entrepreneurs, artists, who turn their product and service into a wonderful business that's thriving. I've spoken with artists who turned whatever their art is into a wonderful business, a business in film, music. And they speak about the earlier stages of their journey, experiencing a lot of anger, frustration. They're not afraid of these emotions. One might be afraid. They think that there's something wrong with them if they experience anger or frustration. They think that they need to experience a certain emotion all the time in order to be a wonderful person. They shame themselves, perhaps, for experiencing emotions a particular way. I don't encourage that, because that is a form of resisting the resistance. What I encourage is fall in love with the emotions. Fall in love with the human experience. There's the physical aspect of human experience. There's the emotional aspect of the human experience. And how we relate to the emotional and physical aspect of the human experience is through mind, through beliefs in mind. And I believe in congruence: spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. So here's how I've been applying it in a way that's been very helpful. I show up each day knowing that if there is resistance, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm going to have a conversation with myself, like we're having a conversation right now about resistance. And sure enough, I'll end up doing the thing that I committed to do. And through the repetition of being committed to my vision, the resistance is no longer there. And so is the identification to the belief behind the resistance. All of a sudden, someone starts thinking differently. As mentioned earlier, I used to be around people in the earlier stages of my entrepreneurial journey who had no qualms when it came to sales, marketing. They didn't have an inharmonious relationship with the word sales, marketing. They knew that it was all about fair, mutual, beneficial exchange of value. They provide the product or service in exchange for compensation. The clients receive the benefits. They benefit greatly from the product or service, and everyone is happy. And they provide wonderful quality, quantity, and spirit of service, as we discussed in the 3.5-hour video we did on Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. I'll link in the description to it. So, upon transmuting that resistance, they released identification to the beliefs that was generating the resistance, and they were able to have wonderful relationships with their clients, team members, staff, vendors, etc. They didn't shame or condemn themselves for experiencing resistance. They didn't pretend like the resistance wasn't there, suppressing or repressing the emotion. They transmuted it. They accepted themselves. They said, you know what, this is what I'm experiencing right now. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with me for experiencing resistance in this regard. I'm going to show up anyways because this is who I genuinely want to be. Steve Jobs said, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. Then, as a result of being this way for a period of time, I just automatically began to follow my heart and intuition. In the earlier stages, it took courage. I was stepping up to whatever initiative. There may have been emotions of resistance. When we understand what's going on here, that these emotions are experienced that way through identification to certain beliefs. And what I mean by that, very specifically, let's say a person enjoys public speaking. They feel excitement towards public speaking. So they just book the events and then they go speak at these events. They love what they do. They enjoy it. Another person, let's say, genuinely wants to speak publicly, yet they experience resistance. What is the difference between the two? You, I, we're all the same. The I that transcends all beliefs is the same I. There's no difference. That's what I mean when I say there's no difference between you and I or you and them. It only appears that way through beliefs. So one person is experiencing resistance prior, perhaps during or after public speaking, but they genuinely want to do it. They genuinely see themselves as a person that communicates authentically. Now, the other person, they're not identified with that belief, whatever the belief may be, fear of criticism or something. They brought awareness to that belief and they release identification to it. Either they understand what we discussed when it comes to the subconscious mind, or they continuously show up each day. And through the repetition of showing up each day, without suppressing or repressing, this is key, without suppressing or repressing the emotions, they transmute them. They say, I have a genuine desire to put out this painting, this music, this film. It benefits me, it benefits others, and it's authentic way of being. This is part of what Maslow's hierarchy of needs, he later on included on there. Self-transcendence. The benefit of all. I'm doing this because it benefits all. And if that inspires them, they show up, they stay committed to it, and they see that initiative all the way to completion, and they release identification to those beliefs. So, they're still experiencing emotions. One person is experiencing emotions as resistance, or emotions, more specifically, are revealing through the resistance the beliefs that are identified with. The other is still experiencing emotions. They're experiencing excitement. I mentioned many times, this is my story as well. A number of years ago, I started teaching these speed reading workshops on behalf of Iris Reading, 2010, while I was building my IT business. And on the days leading up to it, it would start off on Monday, I would feel anxiety. Friday, it would be a lot of anxiety. But I transmuted those emotions by changing the conversation I was having about how I was relating to others, how I was relating to the event, how I was relating to myself. And what happened was the energy is experienced differently. I experience it now as excitement. So we can change how we relate to the experience of resistance and not suppress or repress the resistance, but transmute it. And what happens? Then a person stays committed. They automatically show up each day. I don't want to do anything else but what I'm doing. I genuinely want to do it. I don't have resistance to doing these things. I say I show up, I make flow a priority. I made flow a priority in 2017. I'll put a link in the description to my flow-based life series. I recommend watching it, where I share the story and the nuances in relation to living a flow-based life. I genuinely desire to live how I truly desire to live. You genuinely desire to live how you truly desire to live. Nothing wrong with experiencing resistance, perhaps in the earlier stages of being how we truly desire to be. We can fall in love with the resistance by not shaming or condemning or suppressing or repressing the resistance, but transmuting it. And as we remain committed, we say, you know what? By remaining committed to this daily commitment, not only will I actualize my success, but I will also transform my relationship with myself. I will also then be someone who lives by example, and I can then be a leader, a mentor, a teacher to my friends, to my family, to my clients, because through experience, people will change in front of me because people reflect our state. If your natural state is flow-based, others reflect your state. I noticed this personally over the years since I made flow a priority. In the earlier stages, I was trying to convince people there's no one to change but self, as we spoke about this in Sunday's video. This world is appearances. This is the world of appearances. What is related to the one cause within. So what are we relating to the one cause within? Through beliefs. And so we experience it accordingly. Number 3, remain committed for the long haul. So I mentioned this many times. Every day I show up committed, whether there appears to be visible results, ideal visible results or not. If the results were up to par, great. If the results were not up to par, great. Now, why would I say this? Because I accept myself unconditionally. And it's inevitable. When you commit, you show up, you commit, and remain committed, results are inevitable. Results happen. How can a person show up each day and make, let's say, for example, I work with real estate companies. They have their systems down to such a refinement where their team only has to follow the system and engage 5 new prospects each day. And based on statistics and following the system, they found that their agents hit their numbers. And if they want to increase their numbers, well, let's up 5 to 6 or 8 or 10. They have it down to a science. All they do to succeed is show up each day, remain committed for the long haul. And I'll throw in from a state of flow. Why from a state of flow? Because then the emotions are transmuted automatically. And what ends up happening wonderfully is not only do they achieve their numbers, they increase their conversion ratios. Their numbers improve. Why? Because they're developing skill each day. They're learning the nuances through life experience. Nuances that perhaps are not taught in books or videos or even from people that you might know. Because we have such a personal experience with life that we understand these nuances through experiencing these nuances. It could be nuances of how to define and where to find the ideal prospects. It could be nuances of communication, your style of communication that may be distinct from other sales trainings that are available, yet they tend to follow, a lot of times I find, the best practices of consultative selling, direct response marketing, copywriting. After the conversations, what do you do after the conversations? Nuances in relation to that. Sometimes someone might say, well, you have to call them. Well, the answer is it depends, and let's explore that. Maybe you don't call them afterwards. Maybe you email them. Maybe you send them a DM. Maybe you send them a text message. Maybe you go to the event that they said that they were going to go to so you could further build a relationship with them. These nuances happen when a person turns pro. And the resistance on the journey to actualizing the success is not a problem. And what is being encouraged in the book is to not see it as a problem. to transmute the resistance. Because many that I've spoken with, including myself, in the earlier stages of the journey to actualizing their entrepreneurial success, career success, they were experiencing resistance. Yes, there were some that said they never had the resistance. And when I had conversations with them, I realized they never had identification to particular beliefs, so they weren't experiencing the resistance because they never identified with those beliefs that were generating the resistance. So regardless, whether a person has the resistance now or not, they have the opportunity to release identification to the beliefs that are resulting in the resistance by showing up each day from a state of flow. Enjoy the experience, because when you enjoy the experience, when you love what you do and you feel the love with the experience, your love within felt with the experience, resistance is transmuted. As you remain committed, you enjoy it. You enjoy the journey. As I always say, I value the journey and the destination, and I see them as one. And as you remain committed for the long haul, you achieve mastery. You refine to higher degrees. You succeed in business, you build another one, you build another one. Now, in the 50th law, there's a chapter on opportunism. It speaks about how every situation contains the possibility for something positive, an opportunity. It is how you look at it that matters. So we're the ones assigning meaning to experiences. And this meaning that we're assigning to experiences, whether it be conscious, a lot of times it's subconscious, is resulting in how we relate to the emotions. And if we assign a meaning that generates resistance, we can in that moment abide as the stillness. Acknowledge that you transcend all beliefs. You transcend the emotion. You transcend the experience. You transcend the thoughts in mind. You transcend the beliefs. Be as you are. Return to the stillness for a moment. Neutralize. And then an idea pops up in mind. Or you see the event or the experience differently. You see it in harmony and in contribution to your vision. You see it as an opportunity. You have in that moment transmuted the emotion, because when you see the opportunity, you feel excitement. So perhaps one had resistance in relation to an event. That resistance is revealing identification to a belief that is resulting in that resistance. They don't shame or condemn themselves. They return to the stillness, abide as the silence, and then they see the opportunity. Now they feel emotions flowing through an experience called excitement or joy. It also speaks about how lack of resources, or the appearance of lack of resources, can be an advantage, resulting in being more inventive with what you appear to have now. We are right now standing on our own acres of diamonds, whether we are aware of it or not. One of the things that I like to do when I work with my consulting clients is we go through a process of bringing awareness to the different resources, assets, relationships, opportunities that they have, creating a list of them sometimes, and finding creative ways that we can combine them. Let's say a person has an asset of a property. They may know somebody that would love to do events. That other person not only would love to do events, but those that they offer that service that they do to can benefit from the service being offered by the person who owns the property. So I say, work a deal with them. Allow them to use your space for free in exchange for, at the end, having a conversation with the audience, talking about what you do. And you can end up acquiring new business by doing that. Again, assets, resources, relationships, opportunities. This wonderful practice, if you take this and apply this as a practice, it's a practical way of transmuting the emotions. Because, see, if a person experiences an emotion of resistance, let's say the resistance brought awareness to the belief of they don't know how it's going to work out because they look at perhaps past experiences and it didn't work out when they didn't see the options. If they do an exercise like that, they'll actually find that they have access to more resources, more assets, more relationships, more opportunities than they were aware of prior, because they're focusing on looking for those. And what ends up happening then is the emotional experience is transmuted into excitement, joy. Oh, I can do this, or I could do that. I can call this person. We could work something out that's mutually harmonious. So the 50th Law is a wonderful book. I love Robert Greene's work. He did the collaboration with 50 Cent. Wonderful. I especially love listening to the audiobook. I recommend listening to the audiobook. So what we're doing is mentally framing an event as a blessing. And what this does is it transmutes the resistance. And as a result of the transmutation, it's easier to move forward with whatever initiative. That's why I like to combine what was discussed in both of these books. So again, The War of Art, turning pro, as he says. This allows us to transmute the resistance. What is said in the 50th Law is that opportunities are everywhere, and that we're the ones assigning meaning to what appears in the current environment, in which we could say we're preventing ourselves from seeing the opportunities. But a simple exercise like I gave helps tremendously with that. It speaks about how events in life are labeled as negative or positive. So we still the mind to calm the emotions. And by calming the emotions, what ends up happening is we acknowledge that we are beyond the labels of this event in life being positive or negative. And then we can choose to calibrate over to our vision by asking ourselves the question, what is the opportunity here? It could be an opportunity to learn a new skill. It could be an opportunity to combine assets, relationships, resources, opportunities, as I mentioned. It could be an opportunity to learn something so that you could share it with your clients, your teams, which builds like and trust. For example, that's one of my favorite things to do. One of the reasons why I like making these videos is I get to share my experience in relation to the different circumstances and events in my life and how I've applied these books and my style of doing things, and share my stories because I know with certainty it's helpful for you. It's wonderful to hear the same thing or the same thing said differently from another person's perspective based on reference experience, because something happens within us when we experience information this way. We also end up releasing the resistance because we allow for possibilities. Because we may say, well, Joseph was able to do it in this regard. This other person was able to do it in another regard. What makes them and I any different? Well, you and I are not different. The I transcends the mind, the beliefs in mind, the body. And so we transcend life experiences, and we can choose how we relate to life experiences, just like how another person related to life experiences differently. So it is based on beliefs in mind that result in the automatic interpretation of events as negative or positive, and no shame and condemnation. We don't shame or condemn ourselves. That could generate resistance. We don't shame or condemn the resistance. That could further generate resistance. We allow the emotions to be, or transmute the emotions by showing up each day in relation to the opportunities, committing to it, allowing the emotions to release while we perform the initiatives. I remember I worked very closely with someone who was very proficient at selling on Facebook, yet he had a lot of resistance. So he had a lot of contacts and he had a wonderful service, yet the resistance was there in relation to doing it. So I was sitting beside him and he would say, okay, this is what this person said. What should I say in this scenario? And I would say, well, the answer is depends. Let's explore this. What I was really doing was just neutralizing the resistance, bringing it into a calm. And then I might say, what about this? What about that? And they would find their way, which is a combination, or might even be a different way. They don't have to do it my way. And then he ends up actually hitting his quota for his sales numbers that he wanted to achieve that month. Because rather than automatically assigning negative to an event in relation to, let's say, someone rejected him or had an objection, we had a conversation of how that's an opportunity, how that's optimization data, how they could see it differently. And even if you don't know how to see it differently now, there is information out there. There are people out there who are very proficient at that skill, and they can teach you based on their personal experiences what they did in that given event or circumstance. And that could be helpful. You may do that, you may not do something like that. Nonetheless, you see opportunities. So he says in the book, instead of becoming discouraged, see it as a wake-up call, a challenge that you will transform into an opportunity. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's conclude this with an autosuggestion to further encourage. You can say, what appears in and as the journey to actualizing my vision are opportunities. I'm able to see them more so by accepting that I already have all that I desire, regardless of appearances. By acknowledging that I am fulfilled, I allow the emotions to be. I allow the beliefs to release. As a result, the experience changes. I'm able to see the opportunities that present themselves and move forward with them from a state of flow. From this joy, bliss, and excitement, it's easy for me to show up each day, remain committed, and remain committed for the long haul, as I know that all of this is the journey to actualizing my vision. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk with you soon. Take care.